Is Sean Evers, Managing Partner of Gulf Intelligence, and I'll be the moderator this morning. I'd like to welcome everybody to the third Fujairah IP Week virtual London Workshop 2021. Of course, under normal circumstances, we would all be sitting in London around a big table and enjoying our coffee and breakfast. But of course, this is the year we're in it, so we're doing this virtually. Taking stock on the outlook for Fujairah to emerge as a global energy trading hub, a journey that has been many years in the making and every year sees some very significant progression towards that holy grail, if you like. I'm very honored to be moderating and emceeing the webinar today for our host, the Fujairah Oil Industry Zone. And it gives me great pleasure to ask Captain Salem Hmoudi, the director of the Fujairah Oil Industry Zone, to turn on his camera and microphone and to make the welcome note.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you, Sean. It is our pleasure to be hosting the third Fujairah IP Week workshop. And we welcome and thank all the partners who have been supporting us to make this journey successful one over the last few years. Special thanks go to Gulf Intelligence team for all the effort in making the event. 2020 was a year of uncertainties and great learnings to all of us, I believe. Many industries were affected and reshaped. Despite all the challenges, Fujairah retained its efficiency and attractiveness by providing superior infrastructure and services, enabling the market participant to adapt to the volatile and uncertain market, riding the wave of 2020. Fujairah continues its transition towards being a global energy hub. Last year, we have seen the commissioning of Ecomar terminal with 20,000 barrel per day refinery and 100,000 cubic meter storage capacity. Additional 50,000 cubic meter to be commissioned during this year. At the same time, we are finalizing phase 3 expansion plan, which will be adding 40,000 barrel per day of refining and up to 800,000 cubic meter worth of storage to Ecomar. Borouge Petroleum is well underway to commission phase 2 expansion, adding additional 600,000 cubic meter of tanks that are capable of handling black and white oil to enhance the flexibility of the available infrastructure. On the other hand, phase 3 for Borouge is reaching an advanced stage and works to start during the second half of this year. The project will contain a topping unit for marine fuels with provisions to add a fully fledged refinery in the near future and a storage capacity in excess of 2 million cubic meter. Other developments taking place in the latest announcement of the Murban oil future contracts, the agreement between Port of Fujairah and Abu Dhabi ports to further enhance the container trade of the Emirates and the Etihad Rail, all of which I consider as a very healthy indicators of the organic growth of the area. During the coming couple of hours or 90 minutes, we will be listening and discussing the latest developments taking place on Fujairah. Till then, I wish you a fruitful engagement and thank you for your valuable participation in the third Fujairah IP Week workshop. Thank you very much. Back to you, Sean.
Thank you, Captain Salem. I'd ask you to stay on the virtual stage. And before we invite our other speakers on the first panel, I'd like to give the opportunity for everybody who's joining us to participate and get their views on the sort of general headline, if you like, with a first survey question. If we could bring that up, Irene, which is basically to get a pulse in the room of where people think Fujairah is at in its journey. How close is Fujairah to being a global energy trading hub? We ask for your opinion. Just click on one of the 5 answers which you think from your perspective best applies at this moment in time, and we look forward to getting the full result of that survey question after we introduce everybody. So I would like to welcome our panel. We're going to have 3 panels, each will be 30 minutes each, and so let's start with the first panel. The first panel is with Captain Mousa Morad, Managing Director of Port of Fujairah, who's our host. So I'd invite Captain Mousa to open his camera. Mr. Mike Muller, the head of Vitol Asia. Also, Mike, please open your camera. And Mr. Vladimir Langhamer, Managing Director, Supply and Trading at OMV. Please all open your cameras and microphones. And we are going to tackle the question of how might Fujairah further capitalize on its unique role as a crude benchmark location. As many of you may know, as of next month, the ICE Futures Exchange Abu Dhabi will launch and they will introduce the first global benchmark in the UAE for Murban, and that will be physically settled in Fujairah. So we're asking our panelists today of this event that's happening, how might Fujairah further capitalize on this unique development? And I'm going to give each of our speakers the opportunity to give us sort of a 2-minute statement on their views on that question. Let's kick off with Mike Muller, head of Vitol in Asia, sitting in Singapore. Mike, welcome, and we welcome your opening thoughts.
Thank you, dear friends. Gulf Intelligence is our host, Captain Salem of Fujairah Oil Industry Zone, our patron and fellow panelist. It's indeed a great pleasure to be in Singapore where it's afternoon and not cold, where I recall 2 years back for this very session I had to scrape the ice off my car in West London to make it into the Grosvenor House, I believe it was, in Park Lane. Let us briefly acknowledge the passing of Sheikh Yamani. I think it's quite fitting that we do so at an IP week because of the pivotal role that gentleman played in the shaping of markets as we know them today. A great figure in our industry. I think since we've been asked to cover a topic that goes, how might Fujairah capitalize further on its unique role as a crude benchmark location, and subsequent panels will be talking about products and other things. We must, of course, talk about the infrastructure in Fujairah, and we must, of course, talk about IFAD and the exciting launch that we have ahead of us. IFAD being a venture of ADNOC, ICE Futures, and of course 8 invited partners, each of whom are seen as participants in the physical Murban market, seeking to create liquidity and a success of what is not the first, but the Middle East Gulf's second crude oil exchange. Before I say more about that, and of course it'll come through into the debate, let's have a little scene setting perhaps, because there's so much to say about crude oil markets. When I just checked the price of Brent, it's sitting at $65.30, which is nearly $1.50 below the high in the high 66s we saw earlier this week. And we have a very strong backwardation in the market. So the price of Brent at the end of 2023 is about $5 lower, but still just above $60. So the shape of the curve of oil is one where you normally expect inventories to be low because there's a perceived scarcity or tightness of supply at the front of the market compared to the back end of the market. What we're actually seeing, of course, is something where inventories are still high, but as we all know, OPEC Plus have done a highly successful job at managing supply to the market to create an environment where we are drawing stocks. And as such, we have a built into the market view that inventories will be at a point where this backwardation in the market is indeed justified. Of course, there are other influences also. A very large one, which is right on the doorstep across the water from Fujairah, is the prospect of the return of Iranian oil, which will be a function, of course, of the negotiations around the JCPOA, and very many parties involved in that. We have to bear in mind that there's been an administration change in the US, but there is also going to be a presidential election in Iran itself, which is later this summer, which may or may not hinder progress. But the market saw many headlines around that at the end of last week, and some say that this served to arrest the further increase in the price of oil from mid-66s. We know that there are many advisory investment banks out there who put out notices to their clientele calling for prices in the 70s. And there are many people that have said that the markets are simply a reflection of a euphoric bull run known by some as a super cycle, which is transcending all commodities. And we can get into other things as well here, of course, but that oil in a comparative sense has not been moving as fast as other commodities in a world that's growing. But then we need a sanity check around the whole thing, which is that we still have a virus problem. And in many of Sean's daily daily roundtables that he hosts in the morning at 10:30 Abu Dhabi time, UAE time, we have heard the word virus less and less. But the vaccine rollout and the ensuing boost in the arm that the travel industry needs, because jet fuel is the big missing demand ingredient in the oil complex, is still a big question mark. And we do not know whether we're going to be hosting the big Singapore conference here in Asia, known as APEC, in late September. There's a date set, but we cannot say with certainty that will proceed. So
certainly,
I can do more scene setting, but I'll consume too much time. Back to
yeah.
futures in the Middle East. I mentioned
Yes.
the infrastructure. It is, and I'll throw this open to the panel. It is known by all, I guess, that we have one of the world's only VLCC-capable jetties in Fujairah, which is connected to the port infrastructure. It is known also that ADNOC have seen fit to appoint a Korean contractor to, in layman's terms, hollow out a mountain and create a very large strategic reserve storage in Fujairah, just behind the big oil industry zone. And of course, all this is available before or just after the launch of the IFAD Mervyn contract, which we'll see kick off in just over a month's time. As I said, excitement is building. There are many stakeholders who are very keen to see this contract succeed, and it will be a function of how much both physical players are keen to take delivery or make delivery on the exchange through the physical delivery mechanism, and how much interest there will be from financial players to participate in this new benchmark and see relative value trading opportunities of Mervyn versus not just Brent, which is on the same ICE platform conveniently, but also to other commodities and possible relative value trades with products and even equity indices.
Well, let's see where that is certainly a development with great relevance for Fujairah. Before bringing in Vladimir, let's just get the answer to the first survey question and see what the view in the room is to where Fujairah is on its journey, at least the opinion of those gathered today. Well beyond halfway seems to get the nod. Halfway there or well beyond seems to put us at 75%. So we'll take that, I think, Captain Mousa, as a good sign. 75% think we're halfway or well beyond halfway. Let's bring in Vladimir Langhamer for his opening comments. Vladimir, as I said, Managing Director, Supply and Trading for OMV. Again, Vladimir, how might Fujairah capitalize on this unique moment of becoming a location for a global benchmark?
Good morning, everyone from London. It's not an icy London. We missed it by about 10 days, the lowest temperatures in 50 years. So it's a nice, warm London morning. I think Mike has set the stage quite widely, so I won't repeat the whole thing. I think for me, there are other developing benchmarks out there, right? I mean, some have tried for years. You could talk about Spimex. Some have tried for a couple of years, which is the Chinese Shanghai exchange. And I think Fujairah and the IFAD had actually the opportunity to learn from what has gone well and what hasn't gone so well. And I think we as OMV are also very, very excited about the IFAD opening, because I think it gives an opportunity to really have a benchmark that is liquid, that is widely used for physical and paper trading. And I think there are exactly those two kind of elements. I think on one hand, you have to have the infrastructure to have the physical settlements, which are very fluid and very cheap, I would say, yeah. And at the moment, I think there are still a little bit of things missing in that infrastructure to make the large volumes move in and out of storage, and not just from FOB to ship and just basically ships being traded. On the other hand, then the financials, I think you have two sets there. Again, people that would want to use the instrument as hedging, and I think that's very well suited, because there is no hedging for Mervyn and the other UAE grades. And then the financial players, and I think there is crucial that the IFAD will develop kind of a curve that is liquid, even beyond kind of 3 months. Because then you really get kind of to a spot where you might think that's a fundamental trade, and you can trade differentials between, or let's say quality differentials and arbitrage differentials between Brent, TI, and Murban. And I think, you know, all those elements are there. I'm hearing a lot of people talking about IFAD, and I think wanting to get in and really start trading from day one. And if that could be sustained, the momentum, I think people will look at it because it will have what every benchmark needs to have, which is liquidity and transparency.
Captain Mousa Morad, Managing Director of Port of Fujairah, one of the anchors of this great journey Fujairah has been on for many decades. Captain Mousa, what does it mean for you and for the Port of Fujairah that this benchmark is coming, and how do you think you can take advantage of that? How can you leverage that?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think this, of course, most of the points cover by Muller. Thanks, Muller, and Salem also covered a lot of things. But as the policy of the government and the port here, we used to be 20 to 30% advanced on the infrastructure. Regarding the benchmark of ADNOC, we've been working actually at the plans a long time ago. That is how they're going to do it. The plan, they plan to add 4 SPM. But when we work with them, why you need SPM if there's a port that will give you more flexibility for your partner, for the customer, and then finally they agreed. And that's why they are already they're doing a fast track, what we call a fast track connectivity from their existing port, existing tank to the port. So that's really ADNOC shown. Actually, they changed a lot since His Excellency Sultan took over. They work in 2 policies. One is out of the box thinking, and the same thing win-win situation. So that is really good for the partner, for the port authority. So they are going to connect, and the connectivity, what you call it, fast track, is going to be finished, or the plan, by end of October.
To connect the ADNOC infrastructure to the port infrastructure.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
That's certainly a positive. Let's get this survey question for this session. And before we go back to Mike to drill him down into things more specific, how might Fujairah further capitalize on its unique new role as a crude oil benchmark location? A, become the top crude oil storage hub east of Suez, facilitate onshore crude oil trading, accelerate the creation of a Fujairah oil products benchmark, now that there's a crude one. D, attract more oil trading firms to Fujairah. Mike will lose his beautiful view in Singapore and locate to Fujairah, perhaps. Or E, none of the above. So we welcome your view on how might Fujairah capitalize on this. Of course, all of these things might be in your thinking, but which one do you think stands out as this development is a gateway to one of these developments? And we'll go back to Mike. Mike, your thoughts on some of those answers, others that you think are not on that list, that one could utilize this moment over the next 12 months or more for Fujairah to capitalize on this?
Thank you, Sean. Yes, of course, Fujairah is already a major storage hub, but its major connotation has been as the bunker fueling port. As I referred to in a bunker-oriented conference some 2 years ago, Fujairah was to the world of bunkers what Hollywood is to movies, and that kind of reverberated. But of course, Fujairah is evolving because there's so much more going on there. As Captain Mousa highlighted, there are and Captain Salem also in his introductory comments, there are plans to do a lot more. We already have a small refining presence there, which Vitol acquired something like nearly 2 decades back now, which is a manufacturing hub for low sulfur fuels. But the advent of IFAD and the infrastructure we just discussed does throw open the prospect of Fujairah becoming a major crude oil storage facility for crudes produced in the Middle East. The jetty, of course, and the connections to certain terminals in the port gives Fujairah the ability to store non-Emirati grades, and that has already happened. For example, at the Black Pearl project of Vopak, which is connected to that jetty. So I would go as far as to say that Fujairah is already one of the largest crude oil storage locations east of Suez, not just exclusively tied to a crude oil production facility. Of course, Ras Tanura, Ju'aymah, and similar ports, large export hubs, are up there as well. But Fujairah has a unique ability to import-export and to handle multiple grades. And it has that underpinning of being a very large bunkering facility at the very same time.
Is there a case where, sorry, I was just going to follow up and say, is it a case that obviously we have Aramco Trading, which is one of our partners today, and we thank them for their support, that that as a setting up of trading desks in Fujairah, could this be a gateway for more of that to happen, Mike? Do you think? That's obviously one of the developments that predates this launch.
Indeed. I mean, as I understand it, ATF, as this office is known, is primarily their fuel oil and bunker trading business, which is a very substantial business. Because not only do they engage in bunkers and blending, they also have a very large demand for fuel, residual fuel oil as a utility fuel. So the question is, will others follow to Fujairah? Well, many people have offices set up in Dubai. We, Vitol, for historical reasons, choose to be in Bahrain. So whether everyone's going to set up a Fujairah office in addition to their Dubai office or Abu Dhabi or Bahrain for that matter is perhaps not the question. The question is Fujairah going to see more people relocate offices or open new offices in recognition of the extra activity that takes place in Fujairah? Fujairah, of course, is only 1.5 hour drive over the hill from Sharjah, from Dubai itself. And many of our staff that are Fujairah based in connection with our refinery there choose to live in Dubai where their children go to school. So I think it's a little bit getting ahead of ourselves to suggest that Fujairah is going to acquire the image of a new Dubai. But we do see acknowledgement by many in sending more staff there that there is more action happening. So storage-related offices, fuel oil, bunkering and blending related offices, absolutely yes. The topic of this workshop, of course, is the crude oil emphasis. And very few companies trade crude oil from anywhere other than Houston, London and Singapore. So it'll be very interesting to see whether we see people actually trading value at risk, having books, managing risk and doing speculative trading in the Middle East, and whether they choose to do so in their head office, in the case of Aramco Trading in Dahran, or whether they choose to do some of it in Fujairah. I believe that, well, that's entirely up to them, but I believe that we will see a little bit more of that as liquidity takes off. But do people need to sit physically in Fujairah for an exchange that is sitting in Abu Dhabi with the server and the clearinghouse in London? No, we're in a virtual world. So we're not going to be attracting screen jockeys to sit in Fujairah, I do not think. But you mentioned onshore trading. There is the opportunity, of course, to use the plethora of storage options and delivery options in crude to do many other things. And that will bring with it operational jobs. That will bring with it people that need to execute tank transfers or need to look at the whole documentation or inspect ships or do ship-to-ship operations or cross-jetty pump-overs. And all of that is going to result in a pull on more talent in the operational sphere to Fujairah. I'm convinced of that, yes.
Vladimir, your thoughts on that for, again, to drill down on some of those examples were in the survey question.
Yeah, I think apart from what Mike mentioned, I think the Fujairah would have one, I think, competitive advantage, and that's, if let's say a crude benchmark emerges, you would have a crude benchmark, and then obviously you can capitalize on the product benchmarks. And I think that would be unique in the world because, if you look at Brent, that's not, Rotterdam. So I really have a location that has the same, or that has product and crude benchmarks that are not apart by a freight market in between. I think would be a big advantage, because then you obviously would not have some of the basis risk than you have in some of the others, especially if you're hedging cracks, or if you're trying to hunt for arbitrage between product and crude, but maybe are not so much into the freight market. So I think that is a unique combination, and I would encourage basically the development of the Fujairah to be exactly in this space. Plus, I mean, obviously, it's a disclaimer, as OMV has a small part in the ADNOC global trading. There is an ambition, not only from ADNOC, but also from the other big refiners in the region to control some of their flows. And obviously that gives a further impetus to Fujairah, because that's a perfect location for that. Yeah. And again, it brings those two crude and product benchmarks together. And then you had, what's the topic, or what was the question, is really kind of a
global energy trading hub.
Energy trading hub.
Let's get the result of that first survey, the survey question of this panel, to see where the view of the room is. So how can it capitalize on this new role? So the bigger number goes to attract more oil trading firms to Fujairah. It's the acceleration of the creation of a Fujairah oil products benchmark and crude oils trading, onshore trading, which what Mike mentioned. So it's spread across the different options there. Captain Mousa, which of those options would you like to see happen?
I think I selected the D ones. The D, that is the
attract more oil trading firms.
Yes, and this is actually what is happening yesterday when I attended the table or for the pilot. They already mentioned that there's a lot of new refineries happening around the GCC country and Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. Of course, Abu Dhabi is huge, but where will go? All the profits will come in the end here in Fujairah. They will sell because it's going to be here. The second thing that is also gradually we are moving to the crude. So when the Al-Mandus project for ADNOC will finish, that will open a lot of scenario to us. Are the strategic is going to be used part of it trading, or is going to be strategic? And then the same thing we're thinking at the port and the coast, where we're going to allocate the land. So we're focusing very, very closely to utilize the mountain actually, because the long term is going to be much, much cheaper to the customer, to us, to trade this sort of food. So there's a lot of plans going on. I hope we, at the infrastructure in the port, we will work a little bit faster. Otherwise, they will over jump us because the thing is moving very quickly with a partner of ADNOC, with Aramco, doing very well. Of course, we agreed 100% that we work at the UAE when Muller mentioned physically Fujairah, but of course we are so proud that it will be a commercially Dubai is our capital commercially. Abu Dhabi also using their own financial packages, so they have several alternatives to the customers, and that will make it more attractive to the customer.
Mike, your thoughts on that point, and we're getting sort of close to closing comments now on this panel, but your thoughts on that point Vladimir picked up on, but the idea that this advancement with the Morad contract next month could be a gateway to accelerate perhaps the journey to an oil products benchmark, which of course we've been trying to achieve in Fujairah for a few years. Your thoughts on that and some closing comments.
So Fujairah, of course, already has a vibrant price discovery role to play in bunkers and in fuel trading. So it follows that exchanges, IFAD in pole position, of course, may wish to launch products contracts and therefore crack spreads trading opportunities, which could serve as instruments to hedge margins for refineries, not just in the Emirates, but in the region. It follows that the ICE platform makes that very, very convenient in terms of cross-margining efficiencies using the same clearinghouse. And I therefore believe that IFAD have already been soliciting interest in whether any such contracts would be of interest. But one thing at a time, I think the launch of the Morad futures contract needs to be uncluttered by these future plans and needs to be a success with a big bang to start with. All the stakeholders want that to happen, and therefore all the focus is on that and what is involved in order to, what is required in order to have a liquid depth of market across more than just the spot month on expiry, and open interest, most importantly, sticky money that is willing to put on and hold positions on both sides, on the buy side and the sell side. And that's the challenge for IFAD going forward.
Vladimir, your closing comments on this, again, the question of the first session, how might Fujairah capitalize on this unique new role as a crude benchmark location?
Yeah, my thing, I think if that can be a success, and if that is a success, then Fujairah will play a crucial role. I mean, it's very well thought around why it is a physically settled contract, and obviously the infrastructure, and as it will develop even farther, will offer opportunities in trading. And Mike has mentioned it. I mean, a lot of companies will welcome this because they will have already accounts on ICE, and there's a kind of an advantage trading in one trading house and one clearing house. So I think Fujairah has kind of all the stars aligned. There's still some work to be done, but it can support the IFAD success, and IFAD can support the success of Fujairah.
Well, let's wrap up panel one there and thank Mike Muller checking in with us from Singapore. Mike, as always, thank you. And of course, Vitol's great support and engagement in Fujairah over many years. Vladimir Langhamer of OMV, thank you very much. And of course, Captain Mousa Morad, the Managing Director of Port of Fujairah, thank you for your words and insights on this first panel. We'd now ask you to close your cameras.